Yeah, we'll start with them. Hello, everybody. For today, we are going to be discussing Pom Poko. This is one of many Ghibli discussions that we have had. And this one was a very unique film, I will say. And there are two reviews I want to kick the discussion off with. And then we'll all kind of give general thoughts and then we'll get into specifics. So, Sean, if you could do a reading of these reviews for us.
Sure, this is from the Letterboxd, or the review site Letterboxd, I should say. This is how many stars? 5 stars.
I think they both liked it.
Yeah. Sorry, but if you can't relate to a bunch of chubby little hedonist raccoons that engage in whimsy and mischief to thrive while being worn down by gentrification and the capitalist grind, you're not my people, and also you're probably straight.
And then the other one.
The second one was a 4.5-star review. If I'd realized there's a Ghibli movie about eco-terrorist raccoons using their magical testicles to dissuade the construction of golf courses and theme parks, I would have checked it out sooner. There you go.
And I think that summarizes this film pretty well. But let's get our general thoughts here. So, Sean, since you were just doing a reading for us, what would you say your thoughts are for this movie?
Generally liked it. I don't think it needed to be 2 hours. And my other thing was just like, it was just the same thing over and over again. It was like, we're going to scare the humans. I'm like, okay. And then there's like a montage of them scaring the humans. Then they're like, we're going to scare the humans in a different way. And there's another montage of them doing that. And you're like, okay, I get it. Like I'm pretty catching on that you're scaring the humans. It just kind of felt like it was funny, but I don't know if I needed that many different ways of scaring the humans. Like the one where the one sort of main raccoon and his eventual lover pretend to be children, like weird spirit children running around the house. I was like, I did not need that scene. That was not needed. And there were several like that where I was like, yeah, I get it. So, but beyond that, I liked it. Could have been trimmed. But the very fact that we have a movie with raccoons terrorizing humans using magical testicles, as the review pointed out, I mean, where else are you going to get that? That's, I didn't think that's what I was going to get. In fact, the very opening where they do attack the humans, Gunta attacks the humans, and they're like being driven off the road, and they're like, Elle and I both were like, wow, those people are crashing. And I'm like, and 3 died in the incidents. And I was like, these raccoons are killing people? The stakes went way up here. So anyways, that's it. I liked it. It was good. It was long.
I think you liked it more than it's coming across now.
I did like it. I mean, it's really funny. There's some really funny bits in it.
Yeah, the
bits
whole
has
speech...
a different connotation in this movie, but I meant comedic bits.
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole speech about why maybe they should keep humans around, and it's mostly just because they have food that they like to eat. It's a pretty great speech. But when it first started, I initially thought, oh, this is one of their more kid-like films where the themes aren't, maybe there won't even really be really important themes in this. And then pretty quickly I was like, oh, okay, never mind. So I think my thoughts on it kind of shifted pretty quickly, but I'll get to mine. I want to make sure we go kind of around in that order. So Sarah, what were your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I started the same way because I was like, I don't know anything about this movie. Like, it's just going to be a fun raccoon movie. And then I was like, oh my God, why am I crying about these raccoons? Like, I was not expecting this. So, yeah, it made me really emotional, which I was not expecting at all.
Can I weigh in on that point for just a second? The raccoon who's sent off to find a transformation master, but ultimately fails, and he comes back and everything's changed. And he's like beating the ground, wailing. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is getting a little too real with this sad raccoon. Anyways.
Yeah, there's that part. And then also when they're doing their like final, like last thing, and they're like, that's us when we were cubs. And I was like, Oh my god. Like, I need to take a break here. But yeah, I agree that it was too long. Like, I was like, okay, this needs to end. But in general, I really liked it. I thought it was just very impactful for me, I guess.
I do want to add too that we looked it up, and it turns out, I actually think we came into it kind of in a roundabout way. Sean was looking up if the English translation says pouch, but maybe it doesn't say that depending on what language you're watching it in. And that led to the discovery that Tanuki, there is lore around that part of them having a lot to it. So it is lore accurate, even though it seems like just a silly thing to insert. And I feel like I wasn't expecting so much lore aspects to the Tanuki and the spirits and things like that when it started. I thought it was going to be more like Totoro or Ponyo, where it feels kind of cutesy and silly. I didn't realize there was going to be some of those other elements tied in. Christy, what were your general thoughts?
Yeah, I had a great time with this movie. I didn't even know it existed, so I didn't know anything about it going in. I agree it was too long, because I'm like, oh, how long is this movie gonna be about? Like, these cute little tanuki. And it's like 2 hours. Like, what do you mean? What could possibly fill up 2 hours? But yeah, it was probably the most I've ever laughed at a Ghibli film. Had a great time. My only and main complaint is, why are they so ugly? Because they were so cute when
they were.
Uniforms are so cute. Like, no.
When they turned like humanoid, I'm like, they're so ugly. Because I was eating at the same time. Like, I was eating dinner while I was watching this, and like every time they show that part, I'm like, I'm trying to eat here.
Can I say something really quick? Based off of every reaction Sophia has had of us being like, I liked it though. You don't like it. I'm calling it right now. I knew it.
I was thinking that also.
I thought it too.
I get to be the odd one out again.
I had a feel. I actually, the other one we'll discuss is Only Yesterday, and I'm like, I feel like these weren't hits for Sophia, either of them, if I had to guess. Yeah, okay. We'll get to that one when we talk about it, but this was not a good batch for you this go around.
No, and I feel like at this point I can almost just not watch the films, hear what you all say, and just say the exact opposite. And it doesn't even matter if I watch the films or not.
That's not true. There's Howl's Moving Castle. We all like that. We like The Cat Returns.
Yeah, true. I mean, the mainstream ones that everybody knows about, there. Everything else, I don't know what it is. I just end up with completely opposite opinions to you all. And I really did not like this film. This is the second time I've seen it.
Okay.
I really didn't remember much about it. Probably because I blocked it out because I didn't like it. And I completely agree that it did not need to be 2 hours. And I was just, I mean, most of the film I was sat there like, is this over yet? I'm sorry. I'm so glad you all like it, but I just don't.
What did you not like about it, if I may pry?
Well, that's kind of the point of us being here, so it's not really.
We just remain silent for the rest of the time. You're just like, I didn't like it. Mute.
No, that's it. No, I think. Well, I agree with what you said, Sean, about it being a bit repetitive in terms of them. You know, they scare the humans. They have a party. They scare the humans again. They have a party again. And so it goes on, and we don't really get anywhere until right towards the very end of the film. I do actually like the one scene that you mentioned with the little girls, but just because it reminded me of Junji Ito a little bit. I don't know why. I just got that vibe from it. And the whole testicles thing, I'm just like...
Part of the lore, Sophia.
I know, but... And Lee being my partner, obviously remembered this about the film, and I just didn't. and he was like, "Don't show the boys," meaning our cats. They'll get jealous because obviously they've been neutered because they're cats. And I was like,
Is
"What are you on about?"
I don't know if that's the part that people want to be bigger, though. Or like that
I'm just
portion of the species. I don't know if they're like, that's the part I wish was. Maybe the abilities that come with it, the cats would be jealous of. Because they did shade the cats. They're like, some cats. There's foxes, there's us, and then some cats can transform using their abilities.
Yeah. Anyway.
Did the cats see? Were the cats okay?
I don't think that they care. They probably care less than I do.
So I'll give my general thoughts now. I definitely really enjoyed it. I will say I don't know that I felt as invested in this as maybe some of the other ones. I don't know if I think it was zany and moving, but zany first for me, because I think the themes were really meaningful and it's almost unexpected given how ridiculous the movie is. But you, I think, feel the silliness more, which is why I think it makes sense what you were talking about, Sarah, where it almost caught you off guard when you're like, oh my gosh, why am I crying over these raccoons? And I think that's definitely really fair, because there's a couple scenes where you're like, well, performance of the year, a couple times where they were really emotional. But I also think in a weird way, this is a film that I would make, depends on the person, of course, but I feel like I'm more likely to recommend this to people who are almost like film snobs. And that might sound like the opposite of what you would expect, but I think a lot of people are looking for the more like indie or the ones that are doing something different. They're not following the same beats as everything else. And it's like, if you want, I think Sean, you said it, where else are you going to get the whole like environmental pushing back against the oppressor, fighting back against like gentrification and the destruction of your home? Like, where are you going to get that and the rest of what this movie was? So I feel like in a way it's a really good one to have the impactful themes without being too bummed out. Because can you believe this is the same person that did Grave of the Fireflies, correct? What a bizarre. So they did Grave of the Fireflies only yesterday and then this one. And I'm like, what a resume these three films are. If I'm not mistaken.
But now I want to watch Grave of the Fireflies even less.
Yeah, well, it's nothing like this at all. That's one that you watch where you're like, oh, everything is hopeless and things are terrible. And this one, there's almost like this, we all end up having to cave in because of the way it just chips away at us over and over and over again. But maybe we can still find like some whimsy and community through it all, even though we all will end up being buckled down by the system, So it's kind of depressing, but it has an air of silliness that makes it more digestible, I think. So I did quite like it. I don't disagree at all that I think 2 hours was a little much. And also I agree that it was repetitive. I almost feel like part of the repetitive aspect fed into the themes, even though I don't know that I found it necessarily the most enjoyable. I do feel like that feeling of we're trying everything we can. What if we take the same plan, but we tweak it slightly? Because they're really trying so hard to not be violent after the first attempt. So they keep trying. And it's like, I feel like this is a movie that you watch and you're like, is violence the only answer? Because you're like, nothing else works, even when they try. And I weirdly feel like the most soul crushing part before the ending, because the ending's pretty soul crushing, but the most soul crushing part is when the theme park takes credit so that they can try to get people to come to their theme park. And it's like, they can't even push back against that, really. So it's just kind of all for nothing. And that's kind of a sad takeaway. So let's talk.
I was sad when the old master just gave in at the age of 900, whatever. And it's like, I'm just going to start my music cult or something. And they're just banging on drums. And then they sail away. I was like, oh, there goes one of the good ones.
Yeah, the ones that are like, I don't want to conform. I would rather go out being true to myself. You're like, oh, that's really sad. But let's talk about the themes. So, Sophia, we'll go in reverse order this time. What were your interpretations of the themes and how the film represented them?
I feel like it's so funny because I almost have the same answer to this question for every Ghibli film that we watch, which is that the themes are environmental and that humans are the scourge of the earth and ruin everything. Basically, once again, we have these animals living this lovely life in their forest, and then all of a sudden, humans come in, trash the place, kick them out, kill them, they've got nowhere to live, and the whole film is them trying to get back to nature. I don't have anything more subtle for you than that.
No, I think that's fair. I do think this one kind of started to also bring in the idea of gentrification, like the people that can't stay because of what's being done, and that there is no pushing back against that really if you don't have the means. Which I don't know that I see that as often. It's obviously kind of an offshoot of environmentalism in this case. But that was another, I think, factor to the environmental umbrella that we get in so many of these. Christy, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I was thinking about like how to answer this question when I finished the movie, and I'm like, yeah, that's all I got from it. But yeah, it's just the whole idea of humans taking more than what they need all the time, driving away these animals and just being the worst.
Do you feel like the corporate greed side of things and the way that capitalism affects us was a little more of a point here than maybe in some of the others?
Oh, that's a good point, especially with the theme park that played into it too. And then it's funny then because they had that whole like prank where they played on them, where you know the money was like flying away, and it's like that's the main thing that they cared about. So that's a good point.
I do think the very end when he's on the train and he's like, I don't know how they live like this every day. I actually admire the humans because basically, what an unfulfilling way to live your life. It's so not about you and family and community and good food. It's about doing something for the man. And that kind of like endless cycle that even when they would get people out of the picture, there was always new people because of the fact that everybody needs a job and everybody needs a place to live. So there's always new people to replace the ones that they convinced not to keep building. And I kind of feel like that it's like the system's so broken. I feel like that definitely felt pretty true throughout a lot of this. But that's specifically though that scene at the end of him saying that, and the energy drinks. I gotta say, the like we have to constantly keep ourselves caffeinated and we never have enough energy for anything. I feel like that was touching on that as well.
Yeah, and wasn't there that one quote they said it's like, oh, humans, you have to find a place to live. Like you have to get a place to live. To get a place to live, you need money. And then like it was like one of those endless cycles where it's like you work to live and then you live to work.
Yeah. Sarah, did you feel a lot of that too?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty like clear, I guess, what the themes were. There was one part at the beginning where they had like a leaf that was like being eaten away by construction vehicles, and I was like, that was
that was cool
imagery as part of like all these vehicles just like eating away at the leaf that I really liked.
There was this whole movie reminded me of, there was this interaction in this one podcast that Sean and I had been watching where one of them was talking about the suffering of animals. And they use an example of seals being hunted by orcas and how like soul crushing and heartbreaking that is. And then the other guy's like, yeah, but that seal never had to work a 9 to 5. And I kind of feel like this movie is a lot of that. That's kind of one of the takeaways. Sean, what were your thoughts though on the themes?
Well, I think you could also make this about human on human violence, in terms of driving folks from their homes, and really the only thing they have to do at the end is kind of just assimilate. And they learned from the foxes that was their only option. Like, I don't know. I don't have like, I'm not saying I don't have like a specific thing in mind, but if there's like some other group who'd already assimilated, you know, being like, hey, it's the only way. You just gotta join and embrace it. And, it's kind of depressing. So then it's like, let's go back to the pardoning raccoons. I like the part where the raccoons were fun. Also, just an aside, the like piles of dead raccoon carcasses at the end was a little heavy as well. I was like, wow, I mean, didn't need dead raccoons here.
I was really scared that the one main character wouldn't be able to transform back at the end.
I was scared of that too. I was like, no.
Yeah, I was glad that he could. I will say one criticism I had was the very end when the one guy turns like to the camera and talks to you. I was like, I don't know if I needed that. I don't know. Weirdly, it just like I kind of thought the way that it was ending was good, and then I didn't love that tiny little thing, but it was fine. I thought similarly to you, Sean, about you have to you assimilate or you get left behind and die. Basically, like there's no hope. You can try to fight back, but it's ultimately too big. Was kind of a very depressing takeaway from this movie.
Or you zoom off on a ship, the ship down a river, but I don't,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thematically speaking, what other, because kind of as a joke, Sophia and Christy, you were like, it's the same as a lot of them. But I do feel like while environmentalism is an aspect to many of these films, that this one, it was so at the forefront. So if you had to compare it thematically to another Ghibli film, which one would you compare it to? And Sean, do you want to start that off so that they get a...
Oh my god.
Usually they were.
Geez. Well, I think Nausicaa, right? That would be my thinking. Because that you again have quite literally little, not little in this case, but animals like being, you know, their home being destroyed.
I think Mononoke more than Nausicaa.
Well, fine. I guess I answered wrong.
I'm giving my answer. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, I think for me, I think it's the most overt in Mononoke, I think. Like this one was not hiding at all. And I think Mononoke is also, it's just Mononoke it maybe scratches some kind of itch in my brain. I know Sophia doesn't, but I really like the aesthetic and the characterization and things like that in Mononoke. And this one, I also like. I feel like these two. Have you ever seen that thing that's like a white unicorn and there's pink and glitter, and then on the other side there's like black goth stuff, and then it's like my two personalities. It's like those two things. I feel like this movie, it's kind of like weird, zany, funny, and off the walls, and then like epic fantasy adventure, and those two things combined, I'm like, yeah, these two things, they don't need to be literally combined, but those are the things that I really like, which is why I think part of why I liked this one so much. But yeah, I would say Mononoke. Sarah, did you nod when I said Mononoke?
Yeah, that was also the one I was thinking of.
Okay, Christy, if you had to compare it to one.
Yeah, I was going to say Mononoke as well, because it is pretty much like this, like almost the same kind of story where it's like humans, they want to take natural resources, they're driving the animals from their home. Mononoke is definitely, well, I mean, they're both pretty violent, but Mononoke is a lot darker and more violent. But the core of the themes is pretty much the same. And then even in the scene in the beginning where it showed like the tanuki in their animal form and they were like running down the hill, the first thing I said was like, oh, it's like it remind me of the boars in Mononoke when they were like running.
I do think there's an element at the end to that. I thought a similar thing where, you know, in Mononoke where it's almost saying, well, the animals are just going to become stupid now. I kind of feel like this had a similar parallel to, okay, the ones that are going to remain are going to be kind of like, not that I think the movies are literally saying animals are stupid now. I don't think that's like the point, but the way they were shown, I think was similar as well. And then you nodded, Sophia, to the Nausicaa comparison.
Yeah, I'm with Sean on Nausicaa. I think it's like this film is where it starts, and if you keep traveling down that road, Nausicaa is where you end up. That's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
Strangely think that Nausicaa and Mononoke, despite, you know, Christy, you were saying Mononoke is darker, kind of more in your face with its violence. They're weirdly almost more hopeful than this one was. Because at the end of Mononoke, there's like a San is going to go, well, in case anybody hasn't seen it, I don't want to say too much, but there's some aspects to it of like, maybe there's something that can be done. And in this one, there's a hint of like, well, there's some good news. The humans are trying to have like parks and stuff. But you're like, well, the bare minimum here.
Like, oh, well, they kind of care, but not really. Like, I was like, oh, that's even more depressing because it's like performative, basically, it felt like to me. Like, they kind of care, but not really.
Well, this is all part of the grand Studio Ghibli extended universe, right? Where we start out with Mononoke and like the fantasy times. And, you know, there's like a little hope at the end, but then we have this movie where it's like, nope, humans didn't learn anything. They're just going to go down, you know, the dark path. And then it becomes Nausicaa where everything is.
And then it becomes Castle in the Sky where it's like truly.
Well, I think the thing is, isn't it, is that with Nausicaa, it's got so bad that it's got to the point that it's impossible not to see what the problem is and where things have gone wrong. So you've got the opportunity then to go, right, now we've seen how badly this can go, let's fix it. Whereas in this film, Pom Poko, they haven't got to that extra. It's kind of a sad indictment on humanity, really, which is that it has to be so horrendously bad for us to even notice that it's a problem.
Yeah. And just the way that I think what was kind of sad is that Sean was joking about when we first watched that there was this like, oh my gosh, they're killing humans, you know, the sadness. And the one that was like, wait, we need to have a moment of silence for the ones that, you know, gave their life to basically our cause, even though they have no way of knowing that that's even what their deaths were about. But the way that when there is violence, it's never the ones that are actually causing the disruption in the first place that are facing the consequences. It's always basically innocent bystanders who end up paying the price, because the people who were terrified and traumatized, because some of those pranks they played, like the one with the girl was like, I have no face, and then everybody following him was like, I have no face. That was really actually quite scary. So you have these people that are traumatized
for that guy. Wow.
So there are people traumatized or killed. Surely when they were like, let's remind them of what the forest is like, some of those buildings basically went into sinkholes. So I thought somebody had to have been in there. But those aren't really the people causing the problem in the first place. It's like everybody is so swept up in this current that they can't get out of. And I thought that aspect of it was quite sad as well. It's weird how I almost feel like this movie had to be as goofy as it was to be able to stomach its themes, these hopeless, awful themes that we have. And like you're saying, Sophia, I actually am curious, do you feel like looking at something like Nausicaa, where it is like, oh, this is pretty much past the apocalypse, things have gotten so bad, we have to turn around? Do you feel like that is a less depressing thing than watching us start to be on the path where none of us can or will do really anything about the problems?
No, not necessarily. I don't think it's more depressing. I think it's nicer to see people getting it right and actually trying to do something than, as you said before, this horrible corporate capitalist hellscape that we are living in. But I think it's difficult for me to articulate exactly what I mean by this, but like almost the fact that there was so much reality in Pom Poko, because obviously this is based on something that actually did happen in Japan, and an area that did get developed in Japan, which is not, you know, it's not unusual. It happens all the time, all over the place. So I feel maybe the silliness of the film bothered me more because of the I don't know how to explain.
No, I get what you're saying. Like it's almost like it's dismissing the serious nature of the themes in a sense. Is kind of that feeling. I understand that. I think it's a really hard line that I often feel similar to what you're describing, where when something is really important and then we're making jokes, sometimes in stories it ends up making it so that the serious things are not being taken seriously. It feels like by the very story itself. And then there's the occasional story that I feel like just perfectly sits on the line of it's got the right amount of humor, the right amount of camp, and the right amount of serious, but it's such a different amount per person. Did anybody want to chime in about which you find more difficult to process, the idea of everything is falling apart, we have to turn things around, or is it harder to watch us in the process of falling apart?
I think in the process seems worse because I think we're there now. I think if it's the distant future, you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to see that. You know, I'm not living through that at least, you know? But yeah, I mean, towards the end of the movie, I was just like, man, this sucks. There's probably like little bunnies who used to like to live where we live and little coyotes, little whatever your animal of choice is around you. But
and it's not obviously, of course, even just animals. This whole thing happens to humans. I think you pointed that out earlier.
Yeah.
Other humans all the time. Yeah. And then Sarah and
then
Christy,
when I see a coyote in the neighborhood, I'm like, geez, there's a coyote in the neighborhood.
Well, I will say every now and then you'll hear about some person that was like hiking in California and then they were killed by a mountain lion. And there's the occasional person that's like, well, they were in the mountain lion's territory or something like that. And it's like, I mean, that was still like a person that died. Like, we're all in what used to be animals' territory. It's like, it's sad all around. We're allowed to feel bad for the animals for not having homes and bad for the humans that are just living their lives and then got killed because the animal was hungry or threatened. Like, you're allowed to feel both things. It doesn't have to be quite so unsympathetic toward the sadness of it all. Anyway, though, Sarah and Christy, did you have more to chime in about that point?
I totally agree with Sean. Like, because we're like seeing this happen right now, it's like, oh, this is so depressing. Like,
yeah, I'm in that same boat too. Because, like, so just recently I watched WALL-E, where it's like, you know, in the future humans basically turn the planet into garbage, but I feel like we're so far, like, we're getting there, but we're so far removed from that period that you don't feel as connected to it. And then, like, you hear about it all the time when people review, like, dystopian books, too. Like, back in the day when they were reading, you know, like, Handmaid's Tale and stuff like that. They're like, what? This sounds crazy. Like, it could never happen. This is just insane that anything could ever come to this. And look where we are now, just a couple of decades later.
Yeah, the descent is kind of not a very fun place to be. I think there's another theme I wanted to touch on, and I'm curious everybody's thoughts on this because it's a potential, like it wasn't actually intended to be there, but they have the practical thought of let's all not have children because we already are barely able to feed ourselves. So if we have more of us, it's going to be that much harder. But just the lengths to which people, and in this case animals, but the lengths to which any group trying to survive has to go in order to survive. It's like you start to rob them of their humanity, their basic instincts, the things that make them have community and joy. And, you know, like having a family is kind of a big deal for a lot of people. So for them to all be like, let's not. And then when they do, I almost feel like you watch it thinking like, oh, how could they? So stupid. You know, like you have this thought and it's like, well, they've been depriving themselves. I don't just mean of that act, but I mean the whole concept of like just being against their very nature in order to try to fight back. I feel like you can pull that and apply it and look at the amount of people that have to like ration the food that they have, which they had to do in this. And they have to be more steadfast. Like they have to continuously choose after what happens the first time. Let's try not to be violent. And so they are trying to do everything else, whereas the one that has the most amount of power does not have to hold themselves to any kind of moral standard. But we almost view the raccoons as like stupid and foolish when they, you know, mess up. But you're like, well, because they're having to go so long not getting to be what they are. So I kind of felt like that was also really depressing, and how quick, at least my interpretation, because I do have that first instinct of like, oh, come on, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. Don't be kissing, you know, like you have that feeling at that particular scene. But just this idea of having to rob anybody of just basic acts or basic ways of living, and how you view it as like, how could you be so stupid? It's kind of like when you see people who defend themselves and then people are like, violence should never be the answer. And you're like, well, you were wailing on them. And then when they push back, suddenly they're at the level of the person who was bringing them pain in the first place. I don't know if I agree with that, you know, so I'm curious if any of you felt like there was something to that as well. And I don't know if we'll start with Sean.
I have no notes, but I liked the idea.
Okay.
No additions.
Okay, I see. Did you find in that scene that you also were kind of like, no, guys, you know you shouldn't?
I did, and I didn't feel bad about that until just now. So now I'm like, oh my gosh. Because yeah, my reaction is like, hey, hands off. But
I think I don't want to pull too much and make things too unrelated, but there are times where certain people are held to certain standards where we say, well, if you don't want this, then just don't engage in anything ever that is related to something everybody else gets to engage in, and then problem solved. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work though. You know, what would be better is if nobody was ever put in a position where they have to make some of these more difficult decisions. So like, okay, I will pull an example that is dark and heavy, but like if somebody chooses to, because they think they're with trusted company, if they choose to drink a little bit, and then people will say like, well, if something bad happens to them, like, well, that's what happens when you drink. And you're just like, okay, I don't think they deserve to be looked at as this is somehow their fault. So in a sense, I kind of feel like that's a little bit what happens with the raccoons. That it's like, well, it's sad. They shouldn't have to starve. Their children shouldn't have to be hungry just because they wanted to have families. It's sad. Anyway, anybody else? Is everybody like Sean where they're like, I don't have any notes?
I didn't think about it while watching it, but now that you pointed it out, I'm like, yeah, I did think that they were. I was like, oh, you can't hold off longer. Like,
yeah.
But, oops.
Yeah, you're well, it's hard to not think about that one specific act because that's the focus of that moment where you're like, guys, it's, you know, don't do that. But and I think they're presented, the story doesn't mind telling you over and over again, well, they're lazy, they like to party, they like to do all these things, and then we look at them like they're so silly, and then at the same time I'm like, I kind of feel like we're just like that too. If we had the choice, I feel like we also would just party with friends and eat yummy food and hang out. And in their case, watch TV because they get their little TV set. They just chill and hang out. But Christy, did you have anything?
You know, I was like, what kind of themes can we even talk about in this movie? And now it's like you open the door. There's like so many things that I was brain empty while watching this. I was like, silly tanuki. But yeah, that's really interesting. Gives like a new, kind of a different lens to this movie that I appreciate.
Well, I think it maybe ties to, in your defense, I think it ties to what Sophia was saying, that because it's so silly, that it's like, and maybe that's not even, maybe there was no intention behind that. But it's so silly that I don't think they're saying, I don't think you are like, oh, brain empty. I don't actually think that's an accurate assessment of your own viewing. Maybe I think it's like, it's such a goofy movie and it's hard to not see. They're kind of filtered out right now because of where the placement of things are, but it's kind of hard not to notice the main things that are constantly in your face in this film. And then it's like, oh, am I supposed to also get something else out of this besides silly raccoons defending their home? Sophia, though, did you have anything to add to that idea?
Not necessarily to add. I mean, I didn't find myself thinking, no, you shouldn't be doing that. I was just kind of like, yeah, that tracks. I can see
yeah,
that they would do that now. Like, fine, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've kind of hit on this a few times, and Sophia, this was in a sense one of your criticisms, that you just feel like the tone almost didn't match some of the more serious things about it. But was the tone something that worked for a lot of the rest of us? Christy, would you say it worked for you?
It was, I think, because of like the silliness of it. Again, like how it caught Sarah off guard. Same thing. Like I didn't expect it to end up like so serious. I don't know if it didn't work for me. I will say though that I think I don't love like how the tanuki like were portrayed as like more like kind of humanish, like when they're like partying and stuff, and it's like, oh, they're getting drunk, they're doing all of like, you know, the silly kind of human things. I felt more connected to them when they were in their animal form, and it made me feel more emotional seeing like the things happening to them when they were in their animal form rather than when they were looking more human. So maybe a little bit of both. I'm like, I enjoyed the silly parts, but then at the same time, I'm like, I would have been more attached to it if they were more like animal.
Do you feel like that's what makes Mononoke work better for you? Is that the animals do seem more animal-like?
Probably.
They're kind of more majestic in Mononoke. They're not majestic here. A word I think nobody would use to describe the raccoons in this, the tanuki. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Because like immediately when the movie starts, it kind of like starts in that like documentary type style, or at least what you kind of think it is at the beginning. So right away I was like, oh, even though there are some funny parts, I don't think that this is like totally that funny. Like, I don't know. I there were definitely parts that I laughed at, but like overall, I think the tone was pretty serious for me, I guess. So I was like, yeah, I just thought it was pretty serious the whole time.
Do you almost feel like the documentary aspect of it kind of brings to mind when you're watching a nature documentary and you're seeing animals be cute and silly, and then they just hit you with some really depressing, you know, like the baby animal being hunted by the other animals, and you're like, no, and then you get really upset about it. Do you feel like it was kind of bringing that to mind too, where it's like silliness, look at animals, they're just like what they are, and then all of a sudden you're watching, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like having it kind of be that style, I was like, oh, like, I mean, it's not like, why would they be making like a documentary if they like win their fight? Like, oh, this is because this is showing like how bad this is going to go for them. So that was kind of like in the back of my mind the whole time. I was like, they're not going to win this. Like, so even when there were funny parts, I was like, well, they're having fun now, but they're all going to die. So
that's what I told Sean, I was like, I feel like they're all going to die. And I think, Christy, the idea of this kind of being a parallel to nature documentaries maybe is why you were craving them to be more animal-like in a sense, because then
this is also why I can't watch nature documentaries. This is also why I can't watch nature documentaries, because they just make me so sad to think about the animals in that situation, where even if it's just animal versus animal, you know, it's like the little baby is being hunted, but it manages to escape, and you're like, yay! But then it's like, oh, now the other animal is gonna go hungry.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And they always get a shot of it like slinking away, looking kind of hungry, and you're like, oh.
The worst is when they show, if it's a wolf as an example, or a polar bear, and then they'll go show it come back to their cubs, and then the cubs have nothing to eat, and you're like, no, do we not have something we can give them? Sean, you were starting to say something a second ago.
Oh, I was just saying, like, they're just quite literally cuter in their animal form, I think, than their humanoid form.
I agree with that.
But tone-wise, definitely works for me. Definitely tracks for Sean. I do like things that can be funny and serious at the same time. It reminds me of like Catch-22, where it's funny like 95% of the time, and then you get to like the, I don't know, third to last chapter or so, and then all of a sudden it's completely horrifying, and you're like, oh geez, that's right, this book's about World War II. So I don't know, I like that vibe again.
Oh yeah, from our chat the other day.
Yeah. But yeah, so it worked for me. I like funny and sad at the same time.
Yeah, I think it worked for me, certainly, because I really liked the film. I do think kind of almost what you were saying, Sophia, that the balance of it made it so that the serious things were, I don't want to say it was too easy to just be like, oh, sad. Okay, anyway. I don't want to go as far as say it was too easy, but it was so much easier to process those depressing things because of how silly the rest of it was, that I think maybe a slight tipping of the scales might have made it go up even more for me. Because I'm trying to think, like, why does Mononoke work for me, where it's basically one of my favorite movies ever? And then this one, I really enjoy and I would recommend to so many people. But maybe it's, even though so many of the themes are so similar and really relatable in a lot of ways, and I think it's because this one is just fun. It is a lot of fun, and it is very silly. And I think that when you have a little bit more stakes, I think another part of it is that I actually think the themes are a little bit more of what's driving the story, because I don't know if you asked me, obviously there's a couple of like distinct tanuki in this, but I don't know that I felt as connected to any of the one specific ones in this as I do in maybe other stories, because I think it's more like big picture, and because it's more of a, this is what's happening to this entire group. And so I think sometimes I do a little bit crave the more individual as a person to navigate the story through, even when the themes are impacting more than just the individual. It doesn't have to be one single character. I just think I like when I have a little more of an attachment. And because they did distance you from them quite often by giving you almost mini montages and the documentary style, there was sort of a distance that was developing. And I think that distance, I was like, I kind of think if we trimmed a little bit and then you allowed us to feel the sadness alongside them, I almost think they were unaware of just how bad things were. And I think that also, after the fact, in hindsight, is sad. But while you're watching it, they're not despairing. Like when, Sean, you talked about the one character that shows up and is like, what happened? And then they're despairing. You don't get that for most of it. And I feel like that fits the themes as well, because it's like when things chip away, it makes it that much more difficult for us to really push back. Because if you found out like your entire city was going to be wiped out to make room for some, I don't know, billionaires like vacation place or something like that, you would be like, no. But when like tiny little things happen over a longer period of time, it's not until somebody comes from the outside and enters in that they're like, what happened? And it's easier for the bigger power to kind of chip away. And so I think, I don't know, I think by having them not realize just how bad things were until the end, it was harder to feel as bad. And it's easier to be like, they're so silly, they're being kind of foolish, they don't understand. I don't know. I still really liked it though. I'm just trying to pinpoint why it's maybe not something that hit me like some of my other favorites do. But I still liked it a lot. I just think maybe the tone had something to do with it a little bit. Were there other like favorite moments or funny moments or things that we enjoyed that we wanted to point out that are just kind of random and not big picture important stuff? Sean, were there some scenes that you really enjoyed?
That's a good question.
I really enjoyed I know I said this earlier, but I just really enjoyed popcorn, hamburgers, chicken wings. I thought that was hilarious. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, for such a funny movie, I'm trying to think. I can't think of like a I don't know. I mean, I did just kind of find there was a similar moment where I think Gunta and his like followers were going to, try to return to violence and something, but then they all got distracted thinking about food, and you're just like, you're raccoons. You just like your food. I don't think anything ever came of that. They just like start dozing off thinking about food.
Sarah, were there some for you?
Yeah. So when they were like being the like voices in the forest, like take it away. They're like, wait, those people have tempura. Bring it back. Back. Like, leave it here. I like that a lot because I love tempura. Oh, this is kind of random, not necessarily funny, but did you all notice the like Easter eggs for other Ghibli movies in there?
No, but please mention them because I always like when they do that.
Yes. So the first one I noticed was when they went to like a convenience store and the sign had like soot sprites on it, but I was like, this was before Spirited Away. So I was like, I wonder if they were just like had that idea already. And then when they're doing the big like spirit parade or whatever that was in the sky, I noticed Kiki and Porco Rosso's plane, but I think while I was writing that down, Totoro also went by, and the main character from Only Yesterday. And then I also noticed after that there was like a hat that looked like Sophie's hat from Howl's Moving Castle, but I was like, that could just be a coincidence because it's not like a particularly unique hat. But
yeah, I will say during the parade is one of the things I thought lasted too long, especially the scene with the two guys that were drunk. I'm like, I mean, I get what they're saying.
That was
last too long. I was like, no.
So I think at one point during that scene, I was like, I'm gonna get myself a refill of my drink, and I because like the kitchen's right where the TV is basically, but I just can't see it. But I don't know that I would have noticed all those things regardless. I'm glad that you pointed them out. It makes me want to watch. I almost wonder if I would have enjoyed the scene more if I had just been looking for all those Easter eggs. That is interesting too about the Spirited Away one.
Yeah.
Is that little creature considered something specific to these films, or is that something that they based it off of? Do we know? Oh, okay.
Well,
I'm not sure either.
Are in Totoro as well. I think Totoro. I can't remember when the film was made.
I thought so too.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Spirited Away.
It's probably those ones then, not the ones in Spirited Away.
They looked a little different, right? Or am I misremembering?
They're more cartoony in Spirited Away, I think, whereas they're a little bit more kind of spirit-like in Totoro.
For some reason, this is just making me think about Big Comfy Couch. Did you guys ever see that as kids? Do you know what I'm talking about? The like girl that would sit on the couch and there'd be like dust bunnies underneath. And I thought it was really creepy. And my grandma was like, "Oh, your show is on," and she'd put it on. I'm like, I don't like this. Like, but I didn't want to tell her. Like, so I was just like,
It's like
I was just happy to hang out with my grandma.
They had a 10-second tidy in that show, so I think it was that one. So I would always do a 10-second tidy as a kid, but I would just go and like touch stuff and not actually pick anything up.
I like that. Anyway, other favorite things about the film, Christy?
I think this is the same scene that you mentioned, Sean, with Gonta and his followers, but I found it so funny when he was like, "This is a coup," and then afterwards he was just like, "Oh, sorry," and then it's like, "What?" Just like forget about the coup.
He just like sits down and they're all just like,
yeah,
just move on. You're like, oh, okay, cool.
I thought it was funny too. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, no, you go.
I was just gonna say the part where he's telling the other character, he's like, well, "You're being a girl," and then the one lady, the wise lady, is just like, "Girls are," she's like sticking up for girls. He's like, "I just meant if he was a girl, he'd be the sissy kind or whatever." Just so stupid. Anyway, you were gonna add something else?
Yeah, and then just like little tiny things here and there, like when I don't remember who one of the tanuki that died, and then it showed like his family and like the little baby tanuki like holding up the portrait of his dead dad. I was like, it's so sad, but it's kind of cute.
Oh. And then Sophia, did you have any moments that you liked? You're just sitting here like, I liked none of these.
No, and I think part of it, just this kind of takes us back to the tone thing, but I was just thinking about it. I think part of the problem is that the humor just didn't work for me. I didn't find it funny. So that mixed with the documentary style and trying to make it lighter, but that lightness didn't work for me. So it all just kind of compounded on itself. But since I don't have a moment to mention, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Because we don't have raccoons in the UK. It's not a thing. Here
You don't?
No, we don't have any raccoons in the UK, not at all. And so I just wondered if any of you have ever actually seen one, because I, of course, have not.
So I know. So that's not really much of a thing where Sean and I live, but they're all over the US. Like Shoshana, one of my best friends, she grew up in an area where they would get them all the time, and so she's always like, I love any kind of trash cat. That's like her thing, and she loves animals that remind her of like cats that like trash. That's basically what raccoons are. I've always thought raccoons were like a tiny bit creepy when like if you look at their legs and like how they walk and stuff like that and how they like climb stuff, they're really little night bandits. They're both cute and a little creepy at the same time. But Sean and I don't really have them in this particular area, unfortunately.
I mean, I live in Toronto, which is like Raccoon City. Resident Evil, the movie, they shot it in Toronto, and in the movie they actually call the city Raccoon City. Like that's the official name of the city that they're in. So I see raccoons all the time. I should have worn my raccoon sweater for this chat. It was like
you should have
a trash can, because they're called trash pandas.
Yeah.
And then have you seen those videos where there's this one video where it's like someone's porch and it's got slits in it, so then there's like baby raccoons living under, and then they put up their little, because they have like humanish looking hands, right? So
yes.
They bring their hands up, and like, so it's like you see they're
reaching through,
just like reaching out from underneath. It's kind of creepy, but they're so cute.
They're a little different in Japan though, right?
Yeah, in Japan they're called tanuki, which they always refer to as raccoon dogs.
Dogs, right? Okay.
It kind of looks like a cross between a raccoon and a Pomeranian.
And so I was thinking, like, because our raccoons have like the tails, you know, like and I was noticing in the movie, like they don't really have like the long. I mean, they have tails, but they're not like the long kind of black ring tails I kind of think of. So yeah, they do look a little different.
Yeah, here, Sean, I think this has the...
Or they just evolved separately.
Oh, they're just different. They're not related to raccoons. Interesting.
I think the closest thing that we have in the UK, I would say, would be a badger. Which I don't know anywhere else.
What was that last part you said?
I just don't know if do you have badgers?
I think we have badgers, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'll put North American
badger.
Yeah. Oh, badgers are so silly. Anyway, I'm gonna get distracted by looking at animals now. Let's see. Is a North American similar in appearance to the European badger, although not closely related. Why do we do this? Why are humans like, that looks like this? We'll call it the same thing. They're not that similar.
Well, ours can be pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
They're actually kind of dangerous.
Do you guys have wolverines in the UK? Mm-mm. Oh, wolverines are intense. Let's see. I think like
they're from Marvel Comics.
I don't think we even have wolves.
What?
They're pretty rare, but I think, and I don't think they're as big as ours. or the ones that are in like.
What
did you ask, Christy?
Do you guys have squirrels?
What, in the UK? Yes, we have a lot of squirrels.
But it's I get the question.
Mostly grey squirrels, but they are everywhere. I actually go on, sorry.
I was gonna say I'm almost positive there's just not many wolves. Sorry, but go ahead. Keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, when I was in college, which is not the same as US college, not university, 16 to 18, we had the college that I went to was kind of in a rural-ish area, and there was this classroom at the back of the physics department that looked out over the staff car park that was very woodland area, and there would just be hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating here, hundreds of squirrels would just be chilling, and then a car would come and they'd all scatter and climb up the trees, and then the car would go away, and then they'd all come back and they'd be on the grass chilling out together, and there were just hundreds of them.
Oh, that sounds adorable. I was gonna read really quick. It does say there is a comeback being made by wolves in Europe. There are now estimated to be 21,500 wolves across Europe, with 19,000 in the 27 EU member states, which is still not that many.
Yeah, so in Europe, yes, continental Europe, but I don't think we have any in the UK.
Oh. Okay, that makes sense. I
could be wrong, but I'm not aware of any wolves.
I was going to show you wolverines. They look like mean. I don't even know what you would call them. They're very interesting.
It looks like a bear.
Yeah, they're a lot smaller, but they're interesting animals. But they can be really, really aggressive. But anyway, I was going to add one last thing about when we were talking about nature documentaries, and Christy, you were saying why you don't like watching them is because they just make you sad. Our Planet, which is amazing, but at the end they'll be like, if you're looking to, help with these problems that are presented in these, then go to this website or whatever. And of course, I'm like, I'll go to the website. I want to know what I can do. And it's like, try to recycle. And it's like stuff that I'm like, this isn't gonna do anything. This is hopeless. So you try, but it's not a whole lot. Yeah. But anyway, I liked ending, Sophia, on that interesting question about where things are.
I posted a link into the private chat of the little baby raccoon hands.
Okay, I'm gonna look up. Oh my gosh, this is weird. I don't like it. This is really creepy. Here, I'll share it. I don't like this at all.
Все, пакет забрали.
I don't like that. That's scary. Sean, your face. That disturbs me a lot. Like, I think I will now have nightmares.
I have to say, if I were not in modern times, like way back in the day, ancient times, and I saw creepy hands like that, I would be like so assured of ghosts and spirits and everything. I'd be like, that was haunted.
Well, two things to add to that. One, have you all heard the kinds of sounds that foxes can make?
Mm-hmm.
They're horrifying. And then second, have you heard some of the sounds that a moose can make?
Moose are
like those really, really loud, scary, and they'll you can hear them from so far. I wonder if I could find really fast, like what you just did, Christy. I wonder if I can find massive moose.
I was really disappointed when I was in Utah. I did not see any animals that we don't have here.
Oh,
except I saw a raven. I've never seen a raven before.
Oh, really?
Not because we don't have them, but just because I haven't seen one.
I'm trying to find just the kinds of calls that moose make. Okay, I'll see if I can play one.
Now it's just talking about animals now. Like, that's all.
Do you have
a whole chat?
Is that a thing in the
have
US?
What?
Pheasants.
I think so. I just don't know if I'm almost positive.
Because I was driving down a country lane the other day, and there was a pheasant crossing the road, and I was like,
There's like
I
a
don't
wild
think I've ever seen anything more British than that.
Yeah, we do.
Like, virtually a cliche over here at this
We
point.
do have them. It says these birds were first brought to the US in the late 1700s and they became widespread in the 1800s.
Yeah.
So, okay, wait. I'm going to try see. I'm going to share the screen and let's see if this video will make it so you can hear like the moose calls. Because I'm sure everybody hears. Okay, let's see. I don't know if it'll play. That's not the sound I'm thinking of. That's like a cow sound. Okay, these are like the normal sounds that they make. The one I'm thinking of is like the scary scream that they make. That's more in line with the weird fox sounds. This is a great way to end this. Just like a moose making a sound.
Animals are actually terrifying. We need to get rid of all of them.
Okay, what's everyone's favorite animal?
Snow leopard.
Oh, cute.
And they can't roar. Fun fact about animal noises: they can't roar. They make this like cute squeaking sound, and it's adorable.
I like polar bears and otters and beavers and squirrels.
Bunnies.
We don't have beavers either.
You know beavers?
So deprived.
Beavers are adorable, and they like carry their young just like in their hands, which is adorable. And the babies just look like mini versions of the adults. And also, there's this one video of a baby beaver just like shimmying on this blanket or a towel or something, and like I think it's about to be weighed or something, and the lady's just watching it, and then she starts doing it back, and it's so cute. I have to find it. Sorry, Christy, what have you done? Everybody else has her question.
I think my current favorite is a manatee.
Oh,
that's a good pick.
Those were my favorite when I was a kid, and I keep getting videos now on Instagram of manatees, and I'm like, what's not to love about them? And the guy,
so cute.
He keeps calling them manatees. I think it's cute too.
They are majestic.
Yeah.
My favorite has always been the wolf. I love a wolf. Like, I want to keep one as a pet if only it was possible.
I want a wolf too.
I guess Luna Bear.
I know. I was just telling Joshana that I have thought about doing some kind of Mononoke Halloween costume, which would just be Luna as she is, and then like me with the paint, But I'm like, oh, it'd be perfect. Okay, I did not find the shimmying video. It's adorable, and someday I will find it and I'll send it to you. But I'm gonna have you see this. It's so cute, Sophia. So we'll end on an adorable, not the moose cow noises. We'll end on this cute baby beaver because it's so cute. Oh my gosh, look at how cute it is. Oh, look at me. I'm a tiny beaver. Look at it. It's so cute. Don't you just want it? Look at how cute it is.
It's like they're similar to groundhogs.
I love groundhogs.
Anyway.
We have nothing.
That's unfortunate. If there was ever a case for America, it's our animals. America won, UK probably many more other things, but animals, it's a pretty big one, Anyway, any final last things? Christy, what did you say? Wolves? That was your answer?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
What was Sophia's answer? Did I miss Sophia's answer?
Yeah, did we miss yours?
Yeah, if we're talking wild animals, then foxes, I think.
I love those too.
And
then, are you thinking cats if we're talking about not wild? Yeah, I mean, dogs are pretty hard to beat. They're just such sweeties. As Luna lays, she's like got her legs stretched out straight. So, well, anyway, for anybody that ends up watching this, thanks so much for tuning in. And
tell us what your favorite animal is.
Yes, tell us your favorite animal if you've watched to the end. Also, do a better job if you're interested in looking up moose sounds because they are really interesting, and fox sounds are terrifying. And I'll say one last thing, which is that Sean, your point about like if you were born at a different time and you saw that, you would 100% believe in like spirits and stuff and ghosts. I feel that way about when I see an Irish wolfhound walking, and I'm like, if I saw that thing in the middle of the night and I was in the woods, I'd be like, yeah, this is why people believe in Bigfoot and Sasquatch and like those types of things. Because it's like, have you seen them walk? And they're huge. So if you don't know what it is, it does look like a person who grew a lot of fur. And then that's another thing you guys will have to look up. I'm not gonna look something up again and then be disappointed when I don't find what I'm looking for. So tell us your favorite animals. Tell us your thoughts on the film. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you again for another Ghibli chat. Bye.